Right guys, let's go on Concorde now. In this little room first. So the guys are getting together in this briefing room before we go Concorde. Make sure everyone's here. I'm looking forward to it. I wish these were just real passes though.
Yeah, it was.
On to Ryan. There you go, guys. There's a few last minute bookings.
Come and take a seat in the forward cabin.
Come in here for a second.
What's right, really popped. The smallest windows you have ever seen on a plane. It's so small.
Bravo, Oscar, Alpha, Charlie. Basically for me, I always used to think if this was delivered to the proper airline, it would be like having a personalised number plate. Because the airline that was going to take delivery of this initially was British Overseas Airways Corporation. But in 1974, when they were actually building this aircraft that you're sitting on at the moment, they really merged British European Airways and British Overseas Airways Corporation to form British Airways. And because the paperwork had already gone through, they couldn't change the registration. So this is why this is a peculiar aircraft. And because of that registration, British Airways saw this as the flagship of their actually Concorde fleet there. Does anybody have any particular questions about Concorde? Yeah? What do they got? Go on. How many passengers? Concorde basically is not made for holiday makers, or it's more or less like a business aircraft, because this aircraft has got 4 very thirsty engines on board. So apart from the cabin here, a lot of the other space is used for storing fuel. All right, and as a result, there's not a lot of room for suitcases on board Concorde. Now, it's actually certified for 128 seats. But what British Airways and Air France did was they only put 100 seats on the aircraft. That is to give you this leg room that you've actually got here. And during the flight, the actual leg room used to increase. Might only be by 1 millimetre, because Concorde, when it got hot, used to extend by 10 to 12 inches. Okay, so it would actually get bigger, because what you're looking at is possibly where you've got a gap here now, you can't get your hand in. But during the flight, as the aircraft extended, you could actually get your hand into certain parts of the aircraft. And in fact, the other week when we had that very, very hot weekend, this aircraft actually extended in the hangar here. So it just goes to show you how warm it actually was there. So what you've got is 100 seats. If you put 128 in, you'd have to squeeze another 7 rows into the aircraft, and they didn't want to do that. They wanted to charge you the fantastic airfares that they were charging you, thinking that you were getting first class. And what you've got 40 people sitting in the forward cabin here, from the front here to the toilets in the middle, and you would be served by 3 cabin crew working in this area here. Now this is actually a galley that you've just walked through. In the back, the other side of the toilets, you've got another 60 seats there, and right at the far end of Concorde there is a much better galley than this one here. Okay, so that's what you've got there. Now if you were travelling on Concorde, it would take you 3 hours and 20 minutes to get to New York. If you went on a jumbo jet, it would take you twice as long, something like 7 hours to get to New York to do the same flight. Because Concorde could go across the Atlantic 4 times in a day, whereas a jumbo jet could only do it twice. So this is why it was very popular with a lot of businessmen, okay? And one businessman actually flew on Concorde 718 times. And in 1 year alone, he actually flew on Concorde 78 times, okay? So what do you think it costs to fly on Concorde? I'll be coming round with the hat later on. You've been on for 20 minutes now, okay? So, well, go on.
I don't know, probably one way, one passenger New York, would it be about £3,000?
7,300.
Oh
Yeah?
my
Yeah.
That's 20.
In 2003, when Concorde stopped flying, you would pay round about 7,300 for a return ticket from Heathrow to New York. If you're on the jumbo jet, although the jumbo jet's taking twice as long, you would pay half of that. You were paying basically for the speed to get you to New York. Because if you took off from Heathrow at 10:30 in the morning, you would be in New York for 9:30 in the morning. You could do your business and you could catch one of the Concordes back later in the evening, and you would then not suffer from jet lag, okay? So that's what you look at, 7. And when they actually said they were going to stop flying Concorde in April 2003, up until October on the British Airways Concordes, the fares actually went up to about £8,000, and there was no shortage of passengers willing to pay those sort of fees there. So let me just talk you through a few things. What you've got on the front here is something called mile leaks. They are displays of what you would see during the flight, because there's no in-flight entertainment on Concorde, because by the time you started watching a film, you'd miss the end of it because you'd be at your destination. All right. And what you've got here simulated at the moment is basically from takeoff to cruise altitude. Now what you've got here is the Mach meter, telling you the speed of the aircraft in relation to the speed of sound. Because when you get to Mach 1, that's when you get that sonic boom forming on the ground. And if you were on Concorde during the flight, when you got to Mach 1, you get a bit of a jolt in the aircraft to let you know that you've actually gone through the sound barrier. This here is the cruise altitude. Concorde normally flies at 56 to 60,000 feet. That's 11 miles above the earth, okay? If you looked out the window at that altitude, all you're going to see is the curvature of the earth, nothing else. And if you looked out the window and looked up, all you'd see is the darkness of outer space. So it just gives you some idea how high. If you could put rockets on the back of Concorde and you could have gone a bit faster, you could have gone up for a jolly to the moon if you got away from the Earth's atmosphere there. And the reason it flew so high, Concorde, was because the air is less dense there. The front of the aircraft is not going to heat up, and also you're not going to use up as much fuel. The other thing is, because Concorde is flying faster than other aircraft, you need to get past them. If you went in the normal airways with Concorde, you would be forever lasting, blowing your horn and telling them to get out the way because you're going so fast there. Here, it's just going through a cycle at the moment. Here, it's telling you the outside temperature of Concorde. Now, 60,000 feet, it's normally round about -58. Now, if we didn't keep you warm in the cabin here, when you got to New York, you'd look like a frozen chicken, okay? So this is one of the reasons why this particular aircraft that you're sitting on, okay, basically this was used for flight testing, and this was used for checking the cabin environmental control system to make sure that whether you're in the back of the aircraft or the front of the aircraft, you are nice, comfortable and warm, okay? So this is what this aircraft was used for. Here is the speed of the aircraft. Now Concorde normally goes at 1,350 miles an hour. Now that is basically 1 mile every 2 seconds. So if you clap your hands like that, in the time you clap your hands like that, Concorde, when it's normally cruising at that speed there, will have done 1 mile every 2 seconds. The other aircraft that you see at the airport today, they normally take 7 seconds to do 1 mile. So this is why Concorde had its own airways, because otherwise you'd be passing them all the time. And you might have seen the thing on the telly and in the paper recently about the congested airways, yeah? Because at the moment most aircraft fly in what they call motorways in the sky. That's what you're looking at there. So has anybody got questions? Do you want to know who sat where on Concorde? You're looking at here at the moment, the airframe on it is rated for 45,000 hours of flying. Now in 27 years, all Concorde has done, this particular Concorde you're on, it's only done about 22,000 hours. So in terms of the airframe, it's really good for another 20 odd years if you wanted to get it flying again there. Okay? So that's why I didn't fly on Concorde. No, I didn't actually, I couldn't afford it. On an apprentice wages, you couldn't afford to fly on Concorde. But I must say, I was very pleased in '78 to be there to see one of the last Concordes coming off the production line and taking off. And you know, and this aircraft looks just as good as they did when they came off the production line that day there. Anybody else got any questions? Yeah? Go on then, is it a hard one? You can't think of a question now, can you?
Brother will know. Brother's got one.
Okay, go on then.
When did this Concorde first fly?
When did it fly? It was basically in February '75.
It's February
Yeah.
1974.
And it was delivered to the airline in February '76.
Wow.
Okay? And it flew then till October 2003, when basically it flew from Heathrow to Manchester here for the very, very last time. And since then it's actually been here in the hangar.
How often did it get repaired?
Well, this aircraft here was due to go in for its second major service, right? It's done 22,000 hours. Every 12,000 hours, you have to strip it right down. So this was due to go in to have everything taken out so you could check the airframe to look for cracks and things like that. All right, so that's what they do, and then they would rebuild it. So this was very shortly. There's repairs, inspections done all the time. Some of them are done at 150 hours, some are done at 5,000, but the big one is done round about 12,000 hours. So, ladies and gentlemen, if the Queen was on board Concorde today, the Queen always has seat 1A. Okay? So this gentleman sitting here at the moment would be in trouble with Her Majesty the Queen if she got on board the aircraft now. Yeah? And normally, if I have the kids sitting there, I like to wind them up. And the other week I had one little Irish lad sitting here, and I said to him, "Do you know whose seat you're sitting in?" He said, "No." I said, "The Queen's." He said, "So?" So I said, "If the Queen got on board today, you would be in trouble." So he no more to do than picked his carrier bag up and went and sat down the back where there's an empty seat. And I said to him, "Why'd you do that?" He said, "I didn't want to upset the Queen." I said, "Don't be silly, the Queen won't get on board today." And he said, "You never know." Yeah, I was talking about the brownies early on. One of the brownies was sitting somewhere in the middle here, and she said to me, "I've got a question for you." I said, "What's that?" She said, "Did Queen Victoria like flying on Concorde?" But I was very tactful and so basically said, "No, if Queen Victoria, she liked to travel by train rather than anything else there." Now, Prince Philip would normally sit in 1D, so that basically they've got a bit of space and they've got a window each. Princess Margaret would fly on Concorde. She used to like the Concorde flight when it went to Barbados. Okay, Princess Diana liked flying on Concorde, and again, the present Queen's late mother, she also flew on Concorde as well. And she, if you very often go online, you'll see pictures of her sitting in the training captain's seat at the front there. Now there are a lot of other famous personalities who look to fly on Concorde, and it's funny, if you've got a famous personality flying on Concorde, they always like their favourite seats, right? So for example, if you had Joan Collins on board the flight, Joan Collins always liked the seat at the front and on the aisle, and she always liked to get on first because she knew everybody else passing through her would recognise her. Yeah. Michael Jackson liked to sit there. Yeah. And basically, what Michael Jackson would do, he would also buy the seat next to him, so that he didn't have any irritating so-and-so sitting next to him during the flight. Yeah.
Did you tell him to
Bill
beat
Clinton. What's that?
Did you tell him to beat it?
Yeah. Bill Clinton normally liked to sit in the middle, so around about here. Yeah. David Frost, if any of you know David Frost, he would like to sit at the back of the aircraft, because if there were any empty seats, he would basically have the space at the back of the aircraft to spread out with his paperwork. Margaret Thatcher, the late Margaret Thatcher, yeah. John Major, they all liked flying on Concorde there, and they all had their favourite seats there. So anybody else got any questions? Do you all like the small windows? You always get a troublemaker on board the aircraft. How many? 20. Yeah. And to this day, 18 of them still exist. Yeah. Well, they're all in museums. You've got Duxford, Cosford, Edinburgh, Barbados, the States, France, Germany. They're all over the place in museums. Yeah. But not all of them are inside, buildings like this here. It was part of the agreement when we had this one that we built the hangar, and it cost £1 million for the hangar here.
Would every flight be sold out?
No, not always.
How many passengers?
Most of the time you were looking at, yes, it was full. You would get a few empty seats at the back there. Obviously, after the Paris air crash, and obviously with the Twin Towers, most of the airlines flying across the Atlantic were only flying with 20% capacity. And that's one of the really contributions towards the demise of Concorde. You can't afford to run this, because every time you cross the Atlantic, to fill the tanks up on this would cost you £35,000. Okay? And that's got to be shared between 100 passengers. If you had only got 20 passengers on board here, it's not going to make economic sense. The A380 that you might see when you go outside afterwards, to fill that up from empty would cost you £90,000. So it is very expensive. But that aircraft there carries 660 passengers. Okay, did you have one? No. Have you shut up now? In the airport, yeah. If you were on a Concorde flight now, you wouldn't go into a lounge. There'd be a special Concorde lounge, and normally they would take your coat off you and everything, and they would bring it through to the actual aircraft. You wouldn't have to do that, because obviously you get a glass of champagne and then you get extra special treatment. Obviously, if you're paying £7,300 a ticket, then obviously you would expect superior service. And obviously this is why, with the extra legroom as well, you'd expect to be paying that sort of money to get that sort of service. Go on then.
How many days did it take to build Concorde?
How many days? It's very difficult to say that, because when you first start off, let's just say you're building the wings in a jig now. It's made up of a lot of sub-assemblies. You might spend initially 12 weeks in a jig, and then later on it might bring that down to about 7 once they got the hangar doing it. And what you have to do is build a number of jigs, depending on the number of aircraft that you're building in a month. See, with Concorde, only 20 were built, all right? And they were built over a period of something like 4 years, okay? If you look at the Airbus aircraft now, the little A320s, they've got orders for 3,000 of them to fulfill. You're looking there at building one set of wings a day. That doesn't mean they all go together. It means there's about one a week leaving the factory, or one a day leaving the factory. Because if you've all seen the Beluga, yes, yeah, the big Beluga carrying the wings, that calls at the Broughton factory every day. And the production at the moment basically means they need to be making more than one a day. So they're having to up the production to meet those. Because what you're looking at, the orders they've got at the moment will last the factory there for 10 years. That's without any new orders coming into the factory. Okay, so what we'll do now, just to finish off, then, as we get off the aircraft now, you can have a quick look in the cockpit. Obviously you can't get in there with the short tip and the time we've got, but you can have a quick look in there, take a quick photograph, and that's it then. You all enjoyed it? Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Here's the tours at the back of the tent, as you can see. That's more tours by there. And then we've got the smallest lavatory you'll ever see on an airplane. Again, quite, as you normally see a lavatory these days, not as fancy as Emirates's, of course, but you've got a clinical like you would in a disabled toilet. You've got a little mirror here, you've got the things, the tap water, you've got the toilet seat there, very weird. Got a cigarette disposal here. I don't know if there's any smoke detectors in here, but probably I think. baby table that's in children wouldn't fly on Concorde. So, and then we've got an ashtray just here, and then another lavatory here, and I think there might be some more lavatories in the front of the plane as well. So here we have the light switches, the normal light switches that you see on airplanes. Again, the storage compartments, the window and aisle number. Again, very small 2-2 configuration, as you can see here. One of the modernised British Airways Concordes, they modernised their fleets with new seats. I think only a few years before they stopped running, so a bit disappointing. But yeah, you've got the back altimeter, the feet, and the temperature, and the mile per hour there. And then you've got the roll of honour. I think that's how many. Again, another lavatory here as well.
And we've got now.
See, you have a little look here. It's very, another very small, really small as well. So guys, I'm going to go down the stairs and test the buttons.
Just one of my.
Right, okay, very good morning to you. Just that's the morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the
Right, guys, I
Aviation
hope you enjoyed
Society
that short 20-minute tour of Concorde. Again, a very iconic aircraft, a very large aircraft as you can see. They're, of course, the only supersonic real passenger plane out in the skies. So they're modernising new planes that are going to go same speed as Concorde. Very sad to see it go, very small inside because they've refurbished them. Well, have maintenance done literally every day, they're quite small. Only 100 passengers. So, yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Do not hesitate to leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe for more Lewis Aviation videos in the future. But for now, take care.
People travel up to Manchester to be here this weekend, I have to say.